Perhaps you remember me speaking about Hexen in my previous review on a game called Heretic. If not, you probably didn't watch my review. If that's the case, shame on you. Anywho, Hexen Beyond Heretic is a spin-off of Heretic, where you're taking on the second of the Shadow Riders, Korax. The same story applies, where you're playing as someone going after that evil sorcerer. If you want to know more, check out my Heretic review. The catch is that this time, you get to play as one of 3 characters. This makes things a bit more interesting this time around, because although the levels are the same, having different characters forces you to take a more strategic approach to situations that you encounter, since weapons are different, along with some of the items. In fact, I'll start with the character classes. As I said a few seconds ago, there are 3 to choose from. You have the fighter named Baratus, the cleric Parias, and Daedalon the mage. They all have separate stats in addition to their weapon selections. Baratus is your typical close range, in-your-face fighter, who is the strongest defensively, and his weapons are primarily hand-to-hand weapons, although 2 of them are ranged. The Hammer of Retribution and the Sword Quietus have projectiles as long as you have mana remaining with them. If not, you can still use them with reduced power. Parias is the moderate character with the average build, and although he's a weak starting weapon, he obtains an awesome Serpent Staff second, and then a fiery spell third, with a 4th weapon called the Wraith Verge, which summons spirits that literally rip apart your enemies. Finally, Daedalon is the slowest and weakest of the characters, but his weapons are all powerful magical spells, with the ability to freeze his enemies solid, electrocute them, or use his Blood Scourge staff to fire a somewhat homing blast of fire. So yeah, all of these characters are special in their own rights. Each character's final weapon has an interesting way of being usable. In the first 3 hub worlds, you'll find one of 3 pieces of the 4th weapon in each character's set. Once all 3 pieces are obtained, the weapon is assembled and then usable. And this weapon is always worth the time and effort of finding the pieces, which truthfully aren't that hard to find. And if you do manage to miss them, you'll find additional parts in later stages as well. Let's talk about the way ammunition works. The first weapon can be used indefinitely, as it doesn't consume mana, the game's ammo type. The second weapon uses up blue mana, the third green. The ultimate weapons consume both blue and green mana. As such, you don't want to just use the final weapon, as it will drain your ammo quickly and not allow you to use the other weapons. At the same time, don't hesitate on using these weapons in a pinch. In addition to weapons and stats, the armor also behaves differently depending on the class. Depending on your character, the armor will give you different values. For example, the helmet will give the biggest boost to the warrior, whereas the mage gets the biggest bang for his buck with the pendant. Unlike typical armor value that goes for a numerical value based on actual armor remaining, such as a value from 0 to 200 that decreases each time it gets hit, Hexen decides to operate on an armor rating scale, like older Dungeons & Dragons style stuff. This number will eventually decrease as you take more and more damage, but it's unlike most other FPS games of its time, so its method of showing armor is a bit unorthodox. The game takes the inventory system of Heretic and expands on it a bit. This time around, you get to keep your items in between stages, with the only exception being the Wings of Wrath, which gets tossed once you enter the next hub world. More on the hub and its stage layout soon. As for the items, a few of them return, such as the health flasks. But there's also a lot of new ones. You can now summon your own Minotaur. You can repel your enemies, as well as some projectiles. And another turns your enemies into a lowly pig. There are also green flasks that you can find, and once again, behave differently depending on your character. The fighter throws it like a grenade. The cleric sets it, and it explodes in place in a cloud of poisonous gas, slowing down and doing damage to your enemies as long as they're inhaling those fumes. And the mage has it act much like the time bomb of the ancients in Heretic, where they'll hover in the air for a second and then just simply explode. I'm overall happy to see this item system return and expanded upon, because it changes up the simple move, shoot, find key mechanic of the majority of other FPS games of that generation. Let me move on to the world design. First, the game returns to the fantasy elements, although the world seems to be much more barren, distraught, and overall gloomy. Korax, the serpent rider that calls this area his domain, seems to have done much more damage than Desparal before him. Everything is just so dark and has that sense of loneliness, despair, and abandonment. You just feel like there's no hope for this world, but damn it, you're gonna try, right? Anyway, there are 5 different hub worlds, each of which counts as a main level selection area. From each hub, you can find multiple portals that lead you into other levels of the game. You'll be visiting each level repeatedly, trying to solve the puzzle of the hub. Well, I didn't mention that yet, did I? In order to progress from one hub to the next, you'll have to solve a puzzle. Most of the times, it's only about finding specific items or flipping switches, but it's not always that easy. And in addition, some of the later hubs require you to solve multiple puzzles in order to proceed. Take the Evil Monastery, the 3rd hub. First, you have to find a set of jewels that you insert into a wall. And once that's done, another area opens up with a new set of 3 stages that you have to enter and find switches to activate. Only once you activate all 9 of those switches can you proceed onto the boss. And then once it dies, you can move on to the 4th hub world. As for the sublevels, each has a different theme to it. Many times, there are multiple portals leading to the levels, and each portal will lead to a different part of the stage. Then sometimes those portals will teleport you directly to another level and skip the hub world altogether. Yes, you'll probably get lost, but at least most of the enemies will stay dead. Of course, that would make the game less dangerous once you clear out most of the enemies, so many of them can respawn periodically, just to make sure you always have something to kill and threaten your life. In addition, there's a lot more interaction with the stages as opposed to the standard run from point A to point B to pick up a key, then the door C to pick up key D, and then run the door E for exit Z. I've already mentioned the switches, but in addition, there's quite a bit of platforming present in Hexen. I'll be honest, I was never a fan of platforming stages in FPS games. I can't think of one game that seems to get it right. Hexen is no exception, and when reaching areas where there's cliffs, you better save your game, because chances are, you'll fall a few times, and it will not be pleasant. At least there's a pretty cool death yell as you're falling. The levels are a lot more dynamic as well. Walls will shift around, floors will give away, leading to lava pools or pits. Ceilings will fall and threaten to crush you. Lava itself will spit out random fireballs. There's also traps laying around, such as one is in the first level where walls will turn and spit out fire. It's all really neat and really establishes the levels in Hexen as a more fleshed out world. It doesn't hurt that Korax taunts you a bit too. When entering a new hub, you'll see a circular relief on a wall that shows Korax's face, and he'll harass you with threats.
Worship me, and I may yet be merciful. Then again, maybe not.
The first time I heard him speak, I was blown away. And when you reach his keep, the first thing you see is this bridge, which again, shocked me. In fact, the graphics as a whole were amazing. Sure, the world is dark and dreary, but there's cool effects that help improve the setting. You can use some of the weapons to light some trees on fire. Enemies can be frozen and then shattered. Some enemies have 2 death animations, one as the basic one, and the other for when they are completely, utterly destroyed. There's other small touches here and there, but you need to play the game and truly appreciate them. I will say that the game is much more difficult than Heretic. It's not too hard in the first few stages, but around the Monastery, the game's challenge level just starts escalating quickly. The 5th hub, the Graveyard, is incredibly frustrating, as the enemies just keep coming and attacking relentlessly. In addition, you have to fight a few mini-bosses that resemble the 3 classes. They can take a beating, and they'll attempt to kill you just as quickly. But at this point you'll know that the game is winding down, and Korax is right around the corner. Hexen Beyond Heretic is just a vastly improved game over Heretic. Whereas I got somewhat bored with Heretic after a few stages, I can't stop playing Hexen every time I start. The 3 class choices help the replayability, and the hub world allows you to explore a bit more, and even makes the game slightly less linear. Oddly enough, right after my Heretic review, people asked me if I played Hexen. To answer that, I have, definitely, and I really enjoy it. Probably one of my favorite FPS games, truthfully. Definitely check Hexen out if you're a fan of the genre. You can usually find it dirt cheap on Steam. Just be ready to fall a lot during the platforming parts. Final score? 9 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.